And welcome back to KTN News Desk. I'm Michael Karanja. Now, the whole of last year, or part of it rather, you had something quite interesting being mentioned, the Eurobond. And today in studio, I'm joined by John Gumi, who's the Regional Head of Investment Banking at CFC Stanbic, who was part of that whole deal. First of all, John, how much does it take to arrange a $2 billion Eurobond for the international market?
In terms of effort, a lot. In terms of preparation, a lot. Preparation by the country to talking to investors.
Yeah.
Opening up its books, going through a pretty rigorous due diligence process where we and investors get a chance to look at its books, answering some very tough and awkward questions as well. It's a long process.
Perhaps also the most difficult thing when you're trying to sell Kenya as an investment, or someone take up a bond, a Kenyan bond, how hard is it trying to convince investors out there?
I think the most difficult thing about a Kenya is more to do with Africa, trying to sell an African story. What's happened in the last few years is that Africa is a better story.
Yeah.
Africa is a rising story. And you can use Kenya as a proxy for Africa.
Yes.
But there's still a lot of ignorance out there. The investors are very sharp and very clear about the numbers and the issues, but putting color around the issues and explaining why the issues are the way they are is one of the hardest tasks.
We're talking off air a bit, and we're looking at Kenya's rating is about B+ by Standard & Poor's.
It's a B+.
Obviously, we're not investment grade like you were telling me, but what are some of the benefits of actually moving up there and becoming an investment grade kind of country where we'll actually be able to attract more investments coming in?
Investment grade will give you a lower pricing. That's the first thing. You actually enjoy a considerably better pricing than a non-investment grade country. And number two, you get a wider pool of investors. And number three, once you are an investment grade country, more people get to know about you, and it is likely that will also stimulate foreign direct investment into the country.
Yeah. And obviously, we can always be looking at the international market for some of this kind of raising of capital. Just looking inward, how can banks, especially like you've been involved in this for quite a number of years, how can banks position themselves just raise capital to support the government's agenda for development?
I think we've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
If you look at recent developments, power industry has been financed a lot by capital raised here. Yeah. We as banks have financed the first phase of Kenya Pipeline and Eldoret to Nairobi. We as you know, Kenya Pipeline is looking to do an entirely new Nairobi to Mombasa pipeline. Yeah. We are looking at that as well. We're looking at the roads program. We've got interest in trying to come up with capital for the airports. There is capital here. I think the question is to turn it around and say, how best can government tap the capital available?
Yeah, I know, because one issue they've been trying to avoid is trying to crowd out local players, especially. That's why maybe they were looking for things like Eurobond. But just looking at that, is there enough room for both government and domestic borrowing?
There is enough room if we bear in mind two things. Yeah. One, that you've got a bigger savings pool than we think we do, but we've got to attract it, to tap it. All these Chalmers and others are also part of the investment capital and the circles. And number two, they are not, foreign and domestic capital are not mutually exclusive.
And just looking at that, it's interesting to mention that, because when you look at especially investment banks or other financial institutions out there, looking at some of the assets that they have under management, how then do you position and tell government, by the way, here, look, this much, we can actually tap into this for a certain amount that we can actually drive and actually fill in some of the gaps that you have in terms of financing?
That's a fascinating question, and I will answer it by using one example. Yeah. We've got, as at September of last year, we've got 525 billion in pension fund assets alone. The majority of that is in cash or treasury bills or treasury bonds. Those assets would be absolutely vital if they came into financing infrastructure. But we've put ourselves in a bit of a straitjacket that they are not allowed to lend. Yeah. So we have to look for innovative ways of attracting that capital, but that capital is there. So many times it's us putting regulations in one area because we think we want to protect it in one form or another, and then not allowing it to work for the country in another area. So 525 billion, even half of that is a very considerable amount of money.
Obviously, a lot of the money that we are getting and most of the money that we're raising is obviously going towards infrastructure. But just first of all, looking at what has happened so far with the infrastructure, how has it opened up this economy?
The infrastructure story is all important.
Yeah.
We need the infrastructure. It's not the only thing that we need.
Yeah.
But without the infrastructure, what I call the backbone of the economy, power, roads, water, ports, that sort of infrastructure, without that, you won't be able to do the other things that you want to do. So if you take the telecom industry, it's telecom sector, it was Safaricom and the others laying down that infrastructure that has built the basis for the vibrant telecommunications industry we now have. But we needed the infrastructure as a platform for people to work off.
Let's say one of these fine days we wake up, we have all the sufficient infrastructure that we need. But what should be the next round of funding? Where should we be pulling our resources to go and actually put money and finance development in those areas?
You see, infrastructure is both an end in itself, but more importantly, a means to an end. What you're looking to do is to encourage financial services, agribusiness, agriculture itself, manufacturing. All those things are where we should be putting we should be thinking of putting our efforts into.
Yeah. Statistical rebasing of the economy last year, 25% growth all of a sudden. When you look at that, in terms of how Kenya can be as an investment destination, how happy are you that, first of all, the economy has expanded, and where would you be interested in actually putting on more financing or actually just focusing on for economic growth?
The rebasing was a recognition of reality.
Yeah.
There was an economy there a major part of the economy there that was not being measured. Two, we beat ourselves up too much.
Yeah.
The outside world is looking at Kenya as a serious investment destination, in especially those areas I've mentioned, plus areas like FMCG. I would say, if you had asked me today, which are the 2 or 3 sectors I would really be looking to for the next phase? Agriculture. Agriculture and all the value chain connected to that will be such a major stimulus to the economy.
So is it time to focus on that value add that the government has been talking about so much?
That value add, it is critical to focus on it. It's not as visible, but its impact is absolutely enormous. And those who've read the economic histories of Southeast Asia know that focusing on that area was a major reason for the takeoff.
Right. Finally, John has just finished. Financial institutions have been very busy in terms of raising money through corporate bonds. Are there any other perhaps institutions that could take advantage of a bond of some nature? We know Kenyan was like with some public infrastructure bonds some time back, but are there other institutions that could actually go that route and be successful?
Yes, they could. The trend in history is that financial institutions are always the first, then others come in. There are sufficient companies here who can tap the bond market. Why they don't, by and large, is 2 reasons. Number one, that the banks are flush and the banks are lending to corporates, contrary to everything you hear. The banks do lend. And number 2, we still have some way to go to make that process easy for companies to access the bond market. We've gone some way, but we still have some way.
All right. Thank you very much. That has been John Gumi, the Regional Head of Investment Banking at CFC Stanbic, just telling us about how Kenya is well poised for economic growth. Ian Wafula.